usage. This usage is ascribed to the philosophers Jean-Francois Lyotard and Jean Baudrillard. Now, these are the two main philosophers. One project of modernity is said by Habermas to have been the fostering of progress by incorporating principles of rationality and hierarchy into public and artistic life. So, so the idea of progress brought about the time period called modernity. But when people reach this period of modernity, I'm sorry, they realized that they were not, that science itself did not bring progress. Instead, it brought with them problems, new problems. So the idea of progress was being questioned by the modernists. So Lyotard understood modernity as a cultural condition characterized by constant change in the pursuit of progress. Um, Postmodernity then represents the culmination of this process where constant change has become the status quo and notion of progress obsolete. So Lyotard, when he looked at modernity, he was looking at the idea of constant change in the pursuit of progress. People were changing in the pursuit of progress because they wanted to progress. Because, when he was looking at society, he saw that many inventions have been created. People created transportation modes, airplanes, cars, for example, were created at this time. They created telephone. So why do they create all these things? Because they wanted to become progressive. Okay, but then postmodernity, the period that came after modernity, is representing a period where changing is always happening, not because it means progress, but because life is full of changes. And why is life full of changes? Maybe because it's connected to something else. Okay, for example, um, cars, for example, the models of cars will change every year, right? BRB this year is different from BRB next year. We don't really know that since COVID-19, it has an impact on postmodernity as well. But before this, before COVID-19, cars change every year, telephone change every year. Now we have model 12, right? iPhone 12. Okay, before the iPhone 11, then before the iPhone 10. So is it true that iPhone 12, for example, is better than iPhone 11? Some people will say that's not really true. I remember a few years ago, Samsung 7 uh, exploded. Models of Samsung 7 were known to explode in airplanes. And obviously, Samsung 7 is not better than Samsung 6 because Samsung 6 did not explode in airplanes. But Samsung 7 did. So the idea of changing, constant changing is under question here. Yeah, but for postmodernity period, there needs to be uh, continuous change. We live in that continuous change era because manufacturers like iPhones or manufacturers of iPhones, manufacturers of cars, they need to sell their products. That's why they change every year the products. Okay. So, following Ludwig Wittgenstein's critique of the possibility of absolute and total knowledge, Lyotard further argued that the various meta-narratives of progress, such as positivist science, Marxism, and structuralism, were defined as methods of achieving progress. So, the meta-narratives of positivist science, Marxism, structuralism that explain everything was also under question by the postmodernist critics, such as Lyotard. Lyotard said that there is there is to know everything. There's no knowledge that covers everything, that tells you everything about life. Okay, there is total knowledge is impossible to get from the meta narratives. Meta narratives are grand narratives or grand stories that tell you everything about life. So, according to Lyotard, grand narratives are not reliable. They do not tell the truth. Okay, because everyone because there is no truth anymore. Everything is relative in this world. Okay. So everyone believes in their own stories, their own ideas, and so on. So postmodernity is a condition or a state of being associated with changes to institutions and conditions and with social and political results and innovations globally, but especially in the West since 1950s, late 20th and early 21st century life. Whereas postmodernism is an aesthetic, literary, political, and social philosophy, the cultural and intellectual phenomenon, especially since the 1920s, new movements in the arts. So postmodernism is an aesthetic, literary, political, and social philosophy. Postmodernity is simply the time frame. Yeah? So postmodernism is the way people think, and that way of thinking emphasizes changes, for example, constant change, and also other things as we are going to learn today. So the period has had diverse political ramifications. Its anti-ideological ideas appear to have been associated with the feminist movement, racial equality movement, gay rights movement, anti-globalization movement. So postmodernism follows many modernist ideas, rejecting differences between high and low forms of art, rejecting rigid genre distinctions, emphasizing pastiche, parody, irony, and playfulness. So it's similar. Postmodernism is similar to modernism. It also rejects high and low forms of art. Remember the toilet bowl, the urinal bowl, yeah. Remember poems that are actually rap lyrics. Yeah? So they share postmodernist writing also share all these ways of writing. Yeah? They reject rigid distinction, genre distinction between poetry and prose. Okay, they emphasize pastiche. Pastiche is when you it's like fragmentation. Huh? Pastiche is when you produce a work from fragments of different works and different materials. In paintings, we have postmodernist painting that are produced from different materials. We have parody, we have irony. Parody is making fun of an earlier poem. Yeah, so you make fun of it by copying some of the structures and changing others. Irony, you make fun of an ironic situation, and playfulness. If they become playful, but why it is similar to modernism, it differs in its attitude towards many of these trends. Modernism, for example, tends to present a fragmented view of human subjectivity and history, but presents that fragmentation as something to be the mistake here, something that is tragic. Okay, so kind of like erase this, something that is tragic, something to be lamented more as a loss. So modernism shows life as being fragments. You are born in the years, but you learn about Shakespeare. We don't learn about your culture. So you live in a fragmented life. But to the modernist, this is something tragic, something that is sad, that brings sadness. Hence, the generally unhappy novels of 20th century modernism. I will kind of like amendments to this slide because there are some mistakes, grammatical mistakes I have made. So many modernist works uphold the idea that literature and art can provide unity, coherence, and meaning, which has been lost in most of modern life. Art will do what other human institutions fail to do. So modernists believe that the idea of progress, when we were doing modernism, they don't believe in progress anymore because progress brought with them bombs, for example, nuclear bombs, people were killing each other and so on. But they found in progress in the arts. In the arts, when the artists create a new form or new way of drawing, it meant some kind of progress was under what's happening. Okay, so postmodernists, in contrast, doesn't lament the idea of fragmentation or incoherence, but rather celebrates it. Yeah. So incoherence is when you cannot make sense. Remember the poem, you cannot make sense of a work of literature, for example. Remember the poem that takes its line from different sources and so on? Yeah. So that is incoherence. You cannot really understand what the poem is all about because the lines, are taken from various sources. So postmodernism celebrates this idea of incoherence and fragmentation. The world is meaningless. Let's not pretend that art and literature can make meaning. Then let's play with nonsense. Let's not pretend that everything is meaningful. Again, the difference between modernism and postmodernism is that postmodernism celebrates this loss of sense of purpose and of tradition and values, encouraging experimentation in art and the use of reason and logic in art. Um, so, modernism and postmodernism celebrate this lost sense of purpose, celebrate fragmentation and incoherence and all that, and encourages people to experiment. So another issue at the center of the debate is between modernism and postmodernism and modernism is that to the extent to which, okay, this is incomplete also, because it's in an incomplete sentence with the legacy of Enlightenment values. Okay, so Enlightenment was the period before modernism. Yeah, so modernism was rejecting all the values of the Enlightenment, but postmodernism took inspiration from the past and such as the Enlightenment period and before that also. So I will make corrections to this. Now, the person who wrote on postmodernism is Jean-Francois Lyotard. Jean-Francois attacks the Enlightenment project because it is totalizing explanation of everything, as are Marxism, Christianity, and the myth of scientific progress. So he calls this totalizing explanation as grand narratives. So he argues that while they seem to explain and reassure that the world can be understood as a structure, they are really illusions fostered to smother differences, oppositions, and familiarity. So, so the world, according to Lyotard, is not full of totalizing explanations of grand narratives. Just now we had learned about what do you call that? Meta narratives. Okay, meta narratives is another word for grand narratives. So according to Lyotard, they are just illusions. The meta narrative that your religion, for example, is just an illusion fostered to smother differences, because it's saying that Lyotard is saying that there is nothing that really explains everything about about life in general. Nothing. So it's when Islam offers an explanation, according to Lyotard, it's just an illusion. It's just made up, So he doesn't believe in any grand narratives or meta narratives. So the grand narratives are no longer applicable. All that mankind can hope for is to study the world as a series of micro narratives or small stories or mini narratives. Micro narratives are also mini narratives. So mini narratives are just stories that we tell ourselves regarding life and so on. Yeah? So if you are Muslim, you have a mini narrative. You hold on to Islam as a mini narrative. You do not want to propagate your beliefs to other people because it's a story. It's the way you understand the world, and that story is about it's useful for yourself only. You cannot tell other people that their beliefs are wrong. Yeah? So we live in that world according to Lyotard. Because postmodernism does not accept grand narratives on which fundamental religious beliefs depend, they are constantly being challenged by so-called fundamentalist religious groups. So Muslim banning Salman Rushdie's satanic verses and protests against books by J.K. Rowling by conservative Christians. So Muslim banned Salman Rushdie the satanic verses because they believe in their meta narratives, in their grand narrative. So they would clash with people who actually believe in mini narratives, like Salman Rushdie, who wrote the satanic verses saying that Islam is the product of inspiration from Satan and so on. Yeah? So they would constantly clash. There will be clashes between those who believe in grand narratives and those who believe in mini narratives. So John Baudrillard is another thinker in postmodernist study. He is a key figure in postmodernism. Now he's more interested not in grand narratives or mini narratives. He is interested in commercialism in this postmodernist world. So he says that commodities that you buy are all signifiers. You buy stuff not necessarily because you will use it or because it gives you pleasure, but because the stuff means something beyond itself. It's the signifier that points to a signified. So that signified, according to Baudrillard, is a social status within a variety of social codes or models. Thus, when you buy a car, you don't buy just any car to drive in. The car you buy is a signifier of your social position, your income level, your recreational habits, your political environmental views, whether you have children or not, etc. So this is it. The car. You see the what do you call that, Land Rover. You see a very big car, and then and the person who buy this is obviously interested in showing that he likes to go to or she likes to go to wild places on earth, and then maybe perhaps that person is more rugged, and in his lifestyle or her lifestyle. And then another person would buy this car because this car is environmentally friendly. There's it's solar powered by sun. And then there is another person who buys this hip hop car. This hip hop car is perhaps bought by somebody who is very interested in hip hop music and wants to look cool in front of his gang. And then another person would want to buy this Jaguar car. The Jaguar car is what do you call that? Bought by anyone who wants to show his or her status. So I often ask my students, which car do you prefer before the COVID-19 thing? And most people would point out the Jaguar car. But to tell you the truth, I think the car of the future would be the solar powered car, because right now we are moving on to electric cars or cars which uses renewable energy. So we may end up with this. We may end up using this small car here. So so someone who buys a car, who buys and drives a Jaguar, is signifying something different from those who buy a hybrid car. What is being signified is, in fact, your position as a person. According to Baudrillard, identity is a product of signifiers with which one surrounds oneself. So Baudrillard takes this idea of signifying signified relationship further by discussing his idea of called simulacrum. So what is simulacrum? Baudrillard starts with the idea that signifiers are representations that point to something beyond or aside the signifiers themselves. And these signifiers are called simulacrum. Now, how can a signifier be pointing to something beyond the signified itself? Okay. So simulacrum, this is the question that we want to answer. Simulacrum originally meant likeness, similarity, used to describe a representation, such as a statue or painting, especially of God. By the late 19th century, an image without the substance or qualities of the original. So if you see one of the paintings during the Renaissance era, one of the paintings had a picture of God and he's reaching out to man. Okay, so this is called a simulacrum, the painting, according to the people, the modern people in Western countries right now, because they don't believe in God anymore. So they said that the painting is just an image of God, and God, it has no reference, it has no signified, because there is no God. It's just a way we perceive God that does not exist. So philosopher Frederick Jameson offers photorealism as an example of artistic simulacrum, where a painting is sometimes created by copying a photograph that is itself a copy of the real. So you see, sometimes a painting is a photocopy of something. It's not based on a real thing that really existed. Maybe to a certain point it does refer to this, but the painting itself is not really based on something that is original or something that actually exists. A good example of this is Mickey Mouse. So Mickey Mouse is just a picture of it's just a picture of a mouse, but it's not even real. It's supposed to represent a mouse, but it's not real. There is no signified. So a signifier does not mirror or reproduce or imitate or copy reality. They are reality itself. The Mickey Mouse is the reality itself, signifier that is reality without any signifiers. So John Baudrillard points to a reversal of the relationship between representations and reality, where the media is coming to constitute a hyper reality, a media reality which seems more real than real. The distinction between the real and the representation collapses and dissolves away. All that truly can be said to be left is the simulacra itself. Okay, so the distinction between the real and representation collapses in a hyper reality world. Hyper reality is more like a world, and it's full of simulacrum. Okay, it's full of simulacrum. Simulacrum is a plural for simulacra. Simulacra is the singular. Okay, and the world of simulacrum is actually this one. Is Disneyland. Disneyland is a hyper real world because it's just created. There is no such thing as Disneyland, but it's not. There's no such thing as a land that belongs to Disney. Disneyland is created by people, and and in this land there are simulacra like um, Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. Okay, so hyperreality is significant as a paradigm to explain current cultural conditions. Consumerism, because of its reliance on time exchange value, brand X shows that one is fashionable, car Y indicates one's wealth, could be seen as a contributing factor in the creation of hyperreality or hyperreal condition. So, consumerism is why places like Disneyland are being created. They want to sell things. In Western thought, since Plato, Baudrillard points out the idea of an original or real thing has been favored over the idea of an imitation or a copy. This is particularly evident in the arts, where the first edition of a famous work or literature work is worth a lot of money, while a print or 18th edition is worth very little. So Baudrillard also makes a point by saying that the original or the real thing in the past has been valued over its copy. For example, the first edition of a work is more valued than the 18th edition or the following editions. So in a postmodern mass media, however, the original largely disappears and only copies exist. An example of this is music CDs. There is no original master version of any music CD, but only thousands and thousands of copies. Another example is a painting by Andy Warhol. So here we have a painting of Marilyn Monroe, and there is no original for Marilyn Monroe. It's just made from computer, computer generated picture, and you can see that it's just, or maybe not computer, but I think it's more like photographic technique, and it is create. There is no original. It's just print out of the picture by Marilyn Monroe. So postmodernist literary theory is literature characterized by heavy reliance on techniques such as fragmentation, paradox, and questionable narratives, and it's often, though not exclusively, defined as a style or trend which emerged in the post-World War II era. Hence, there are many similarities between modernist and postmodernist literature. It is not specifically a movement but tends to converge with various critical theories, particularly readers' response and deconstructionist approaches. Postmodern literature is commonly defined in relation to a precursor. For example, a modernist literary work has a neatly tied up ending, but postmodernist literature does not conclude neatly. So, postmodernist literature use techniques that are also useful in modernist literature, fragmentation, for example, but it adds more techniques such as paradox, and all that, and it emerged after the World War II. So there are many similarities between the two movements, and so on. Okay, so there's also this difference. One of the other difference is that modernist work has a neatly tied up ending, but postmodernist does not conclude easily. One example of this is Jasmine a novel written by Bharati Mukherjee, and in the end, the main protagonist of that novel, who kills a lot of people throughout the novel, actually goes away to another place without being caught, and so on. So it is an open-ended story. Yeah. The great difference between the both modernist and postmodernist literature is that while both give great prominence or to fragmentation and as a feature of 20th art and culture, they do so in very different moods. One is, as I've said, modernist, which is very bleak and unhappy mood, but the postmodernist is fun. It plays around with the idea of fun. So irony, playfulness, black humor, they're all elements of fun. And satire, if we want also to mention that, they are used and appear in postmodernist works. So one novel called Joseph Heller, it's written by Joseph Heller, it's called Catch 22. And this is making fun also of life, because it tells a story about a pilot who lives in the middle of World War II, and he wants to request a psychological evaluation so that he can get out of flying. Yeah, he wants to be found um, insane so that he won't have to join the rest in the war. Yeah, but in order to request for the psychological evaluation, he has to say that he is sane. Yeah, but he wants to prove to others that he is insane. Okay, because he wants to get out of the war. So this is a Crash 22 situation. So intertextuality is another element of postmodernism. It's a relationship between one text or novel, for example, and another one within the interwoven fabric of literary history. The intertextuality in postmodern literature can be a reference or parallel to another literary work, an extended discussion of work, or the adoption of a style. So Umberto Eco's The Name of the Rose takes on the form of detective novel and makes references to authors such as Aristotle, Arthur Conan Doyle, and Borges. So this is one other feature when you read a novel, you find that one of the characters is actually named Pinocchio, for example. So it refers to another work. And so there is an element of intertextuality in that novel. So pastiche is related to postmodern intertextuality. Pastiche appears to combine or piece together multiple elements. In postmodernist literature, this can be a homage to or a parody of past styles. It can be seen as a representation of the chaotic, heuristic, or information-drenched aspects of postmodern society. It can be a combination of multiple genres to create a unique narrative or to comment on situation in postmodernity. So in pastiche, for example, one example is Thomas Pynchon novels, which can be said to be detective fiction, but at the same time it's science fiction and war fiction, and there are songs in the prose, there are pop culture references, well-known obscure and fictional history mixed together, real contemporary and historical figures. So another element of postmodernity is temporal distortion. Temporal is related to time. And you distort the time frame, you say that something that happened in the end of a narrative actually appears in the first or at the beginning of a novel. Okay, something that appears in the middle should have appeared in the middle in the beginning of the novel actually appeared in the middle of the novel. So you distort the linear progression of the story. um, Magic realism is when something magical, for example, happens um, real in a real setting. So magic realism may be employed by a writer of literary work who uses still sharply defined, smoothly painted images of figures and objects depicted in a surrealistic manner. The themes and subjects are often imaginary, somewhat outlandish and fantastic, and with a certain dreamlike quality. But magic realism is different from surrealism because magic realism actually portrays magical happenings happening uh, in a real world. Okay, so uh, Harry Potter, for example, is a work of magic realism. So paranoia is the feeling that there is an ordering system behind the chaos of the world. So, you know, in novels like Joseph Hyland's Catch-22, you have the feeling that the characters have this feeling that everything is actually ordered. It's not chaotic. This world is ordered, but he cannot see the order. So it produces a paranoia in his mind. And another literary technique is minimalism, wherein um, readers are expected to take an active role in the creation of a story because the stories have characters that only say a few things. For example, Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. There are characters that um, do not really explain um, their situation. They just say a few words to each other. Okay, so the work is very minimalist. So um, that is the literary techniques of postmodernism. Now we look at deconstruction. Deconstruction is the postmodern way of reading a text. One of the most popular postmodernist tendencies within aesthetic is deconstruction. Deconstruction works entirely within the studied text to expose and undermine its frame of references, assumptions, and ideological foundations. Although deconstruction um, can be developed using different methods and techniques. The process usually involves demonstrating the multiple interpretations of a text and their resulting internal conflicts and subversive binary oppositions. So deconstruction simply means that you can read a text from various interpretations. That there is no actually single interpretation that actually stands true, because all interpretations have shortcomings, and the text actually can mean many things, but those meanings are even can be challenged. You can have many themes, but the themes can be challenged. Can be chosen to be untrue, or what we say that in terms of the theme, they can be undecidability with regards to the theme, because the critic cannot actually decide on the theme, since there are elements in the structure that contrast or counter the main theme. So they reject the structuralist view that the work of literary art is demonstrably unified from beginning to end in one certain way, or that is organized around a single center that ultimately can be identified. As a result, deconstructors see text as more radically heterogeneous than do structuralists. So this is basically the everything um, that postmodernism covers. Yeah? I have put this on YouTube. I'm sorry, on eTaklim. You can see on eTaklim also. I'm going to give you the YouTube recording also later, so that you can really see it through. I know that I may be going very fast, partly because I've been sitting here from 9:30, so I need also to go to another place and get something to eat as well. So, but I want to ask you: do you understand everything? Anyone wants to want to ask me any question? Anyone wants to ask me any question? Okay, anyone here who is analyzing postmodernist work? Do you find any problems analyzing the works? Now, when you look at some postmodernist work, like Maleficent, movies like Maleficent. Maleficent is postmodernist because it is giving another interpretation. It's playing with a fairy tale, Sleeping Beauty. It's playing with the narrative of Sleeping Beauty, because it says that there is no such thing as an entirely good princess, and the fairy that casts a spell on her, right? It's not really bad. She is just bad because she's treated badly by the male king. Okay. So it is giving you a new fun interpretation of an old story, which is the Sleeping Beauty's fairy tale. So this is postmodernist. Um, Maybe if you see from storybooks also, there are people reinterpreting, rereading Bawang Putih, Bawang Merah. Okay, all this old traditional story, they give it a new outlook, new interpretation. So that's postmodernist. It plays along with the idea that there is no certainty in life. Even fairy tales um, can be deconstructed. Okay, they deconstruct and fairy tales, for example, like Shrek. Shrek is the word of pastiche because the characters all come from different different fairy tales, and then it's fun. It's making fun of the idea of fairy tale itself, because it's not something that is fixed. The storyline can be changed, and also if you look at ghost ghost stories, ghost film, it is sometimes. Have you seen the series number one, number two, number three? Ghost film number one, ghost film number two. It is a combination of ghost films. They're making fun of it. It's a parody of ghost films. Have you seen this by the Wyan brothers? Okay, maybe if you have not, but maybe you can see Shrek. You have seen Shrek. Shrek, you know Shrek? Okay. So Shrek is making fun of um, fairy tales. Yeah. Maleficent is changing the structure of Sleeping Beauty. Huntsman, what do you call that? Snow White and the Huntsman. It's a postmodernist rendition of Snow White. Yeah, but now the emphasis is on the Huntsman rather than Snow White. Okay, so this is just this, we live in this age where people do this. Why do people create postmodernist narratives like Huntsman, Shrek, and so on? Why? Because they want to sell. They want to sell the product. Okay, they want you to buy. They want you to see movies. They know that people like fairy tales, so they change the structure of fairy tales. They created Shrek, combination of fairy tales. So this is the thing. So anyone wants to ask me anything? Nobody wants to ask me anything? Nobody has any question? No, okay. We don't have it. Okay, no, doctor. Okay, there you go. I'm sure this is about that no thing. Okay, so I'll meet you on Thursday then, right? On Thursday, okay, we'll go through one more theory, but I will also present to you the Islamic perception of postmodernism on that day. Okay, so without further ado, and also because I am hungry and all that, so I cannot postmodernist my hunger also. So before you go, do you know what simulacra is? Simulacra is like this. Nabila Natasha has an image of this boy, right? But you know that Nabila looks like that. You know that he doesn't look like that, right? But this is simulacra. It doesn't really have a person that it signifies. You know? There is no reality to this picture because Nabila Natasha looks somewhat different. And sometimes when you put background pictures, like you are on a beach, for example, right? People know that you're not on the beach. It's an example of simulacra. Okay. And if you play with the game, simulation game, then you where the what do you call that, simulator, it will show that you are in a different place. That is an example of a simulacra as well. So this just, we live in that age where virtual reality exists on an everyday basis. Okay, so I'll see you again on Thursday. Okay, so thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, doktor.
Thank
Assalamualaikum.
you,
Thank you,
Doctor.
Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.